My name is Tracy Ozer, and this is my podcast, Journey Through Your Suicide Loss. My mission is to share my story of how I've processed my own grief after the loss of my daughter to suicide. We'll delve into the hard survival questions and how they affected me. Hopefully, my story can help you through your own grief journey. Please take some time for yourself and join me. Hello, my name is Tracy Ozer, and thank you for joining me on my podcast, Journey Through Your Suicide Loss, which is brought to you by Journey Through Grief. Journey Through Grief, which is spelled THRU, is a platform to help people grieving a suicide loss and to educate others about what it's like to lose someone to suicide. I am asked all the time about how I've done this. How have I lost a child in a most horrific way and am still able to get out of bed every day and function? So I started this podcast for the survivors, the people who get up every day as well, the ones who are warriors without even realizing it. Today I'm talking about some of the hardest days after a suicide loss. Without a doubt, every day is hard, but some worse than others. After I lost my 16-year-old daughter to suicide in 2006, each day was a repeat of wanting to stay in bed, pulling myself out of it, barely getting to work, struggling through the entire day, and then getting back home to bed. With every day being a challenge, there were still 2 days out of each year which affected me to the core: the anniversary of her birth and the anniversary of her death. When we return from this short break, I'll share with you the heartbreak of these 2 days, the way they have evolved over time, and how I've worked to find peace with them. Welcome back. In case you haven't heard of me, my name is Tracy Ozer, and I live in Spokane, Washington, with my husband, his family, and a house full of pets. Prior to my current marriage, I was a single mom for many years and was raising 2 children whom I was quite proud of. We lived in a small town and the kids were in high school. Schedules were challenging, we were always on the go, and it was a struggle. I was holding down a full-time job along with the occasional side gig. Then in December 2006, my world turned upside down when my 16-year-old daughter ended her own life by personal choice. This podcast isn't designed to be graphic. It's to tell the story of how I have journeyed through the process of my own grief. So as I go through this podcast series, I will only get more in depth about the night she died as it's necessary. A couple housekeeping items. Please, if you like our podcast, indicate by clicking on the like button or leave a comment. Also, you can always leave a comment or a review over on our Journey Through Grief website or our Facebook page. We are found at www.journeythroughgrief.com. That's THRU. Or our Facebook page is also Journey Through Grief. Thank you for your support. Most importantly, if you are struggling with thoughts of suicide yourself, you can reach help at 1-800-273-8255. That's 1-800-273-8255. Or text the word HOME, HOME, to 741-741, and someone will be available to listen. As I was saying earlier, the 2 hardest days for me to navigate were the anniversaries of my daughter's birth and my daughter's death. When Chelsea died, my whole world had shattered. I struggled with finding meaning to my life. I was overwhelmed with guilt, overwhelmed with grief. I repressed a lot of it, and my health suffered. I threw myself into everyday simple things that wouldn't take much thought. This allowed me to just be numb in my head. Looking back, I see now that I wasn't functioning normally or healthily. I'd drive places, not remembering the drive itself, and sometimes not even why I went there in the first place. In my quest to sequester my pain and function as if on automatic pilot, I didn't see any upcoming issues with passing through her birthday, coming 8 months later. I had received advice from multiple people to have a plan for that day. I was told I needed to prepare my schedule so I could keep busy, to keep my mind from wandering and being sad. As I went through the days leading to August, I really felt this wasn't going to be necessary. 2 things happened on her 17th birthday. Very few people acknowledged it, and I was a mess. I would guess that being overlooked, even though she had large quantities of family and friends, was their way of not reminding me that it was her birthday. I gave birth to her, so I think I knew. That was the beginning of years without acknowledgement on that day. I came to accept that that is just the norm after a loss to suicide. But it hurt, and it sucked. Although I had been told to plan my day, the morning hit me with a wave of memories and emotions. I remember my short labor and being so excited in the hospital to have a new baby girl. I remembered past birthday parties for her at the roller rink and her first slumber party when she turned 13, where her brother and I spent the evening hiding in his room so the girls wouldn't swarm all over him. As the day went on, my good memories evolved into the months leading up to her death, the struggles we had with her mental health, and the night she died. Everything played like a movie in my head without commercial breaks. I had nothing planned, so I just sat home and cried. I attempted to find some things to do at the last minute, which interrupted my thoughts, but only briefly, and then I would go back to dwelling on the past. I was drained when I went to sleep that night, and the next day I was slightly better. 4 months later, I was approaching the first anniversary of her death. Over the past year, I had relocated 2,000 miles away where no one knew me except my husband. I thought that if I just kept to myself, went to work that day, and kept myself busy, I'd be fine. But then the day came. As a little backstory, my daughter had started the process of ending her life late in the evening on a Friday. And by the time the first responders and medical staff had done everything they could, it had transpired into the early morning hours of Saturday. So for me, the anniversary of her death always covers the course of 2 days. On the first day of her 2-day anniversary, I headed into work. I didn't realize until I got there that the course of events a year previous would start playing through my head, and I couldn't stop it. There was a total lack of concentration, followed up by debilitating panic attacks that I wasn't expecting. While people passed back and forth in front of my desk, I lasted in that state for about an hour, but knew I wouldn't be able to maintain my composure long term. I needed to be at home, in bed, with the covers over my head. That was the day that my boss learned about the loss of my daughter to suicide. She was very understanding when I had to ask for the rest of the day off. The look on her face was total sadness, but as she hadn't become a mother yet herself, I doubt she really knew the true emotion of the situation, nor would I want her to. All my coworkers knew I went home sick, and over the next few years, they came to know about Chelsea and my loss. I determined that those people were my new family, and the situation was part of who I am. That afternoon and the next day, I just sat home and watched that movie from the night she died over and over in my head. The more it played, the more I cried and continued with the debilitating panic attacks. My husband was very supportive, but the truth is, you can't understand it until you physically go through it yourself. The trauma is real, PTSD is real, and it's excruciating. When I came around to the second year, I remember that I had really sabotaged myself by not having a plan the previous year. I realized my limitations for emotional control and knew this time to plan for time off from work. This was the first year where the anticipation during the days leading up to her birthday were more emotional than the actual date of her birthday itself. While I made plans for the actual day of getting out of the house, doing some shopping, and some self-care, I was already exhausted by being emotional the few days prior. Obviously, I learned these anniversaries were going to be an exercise in trial and error. Somewhere between her 17th birthday and her 20th birthday, I firmly decided that even though she wasn't physically here, hiding in despair and being sad that her birthday couldn't be celebrated normally wasn't something I was willing to do anymore. So I started acknowledging that day in a positive light. For a few years, my husband and I went out to a restaurant for a birthday dinner. And for a few years, I went and bought a cake because, after all, it was her birthday. When we came upon what would have been her 21st birthday, I knew I had to do something to celebrate the milestone. I knew, had she still been here, she would have been out on the town partying her butt off. So, I made a plan. I had been blessed a few years earlier to have her best friend also move to the same city that we had moved to. I told her I was planning a birthday party and I wanted her and her mother to come. They thought it was a great idea, so we all went to dinner and a music show that we knew Chelsea would have loved. We had dessert and we all toasted with a drink to her 21st. I think she would have loved it. In the end, people around me mostly think I'm weird when I say I'm getting a cake and celebrating Chelsea's birthday. But honestly, I don't care. It has helped me work through my grief process, and I am healthier for it. Moving through to a healthier place with her death anniversary was a different process, however. Unlike her birthday, there wasn't anything to celebrate, so just getting a cake wasn't the answer. Realistically, keeping busy over her 2-day anniversary wasn't the answer either. As I approached the second anniversary of her death, I knew I needed some help. I met with a therapist, however, I wasn't given any tools to push me through that anniversary effectively. Upon the third anniversary of her death, I started assessing my pain more. My struggles with Chelsea really started in July of the year she died. So from July through December, there were a lot of events, a lot of negative emotions, and a lot of trauma. After she died, as soon as I'd reached the Halloween holiday, those sequence of events played over and over again, like a movie. The quote movie, unquote, was causing me months of sleepless nights, poor eating, depression, and exhaustion. My work suffered, and my home life suffered. The holidays were extremely daunting. This cycle went on for 3 or 4 years, and I knew I needed help. So I found yet another therapist. She was outstanding. When I told her that I had this movie constantly playing in my head, she had a solution. Granted, this won't work for everyone, but it worked for me. She told me to pick a funny memory that I had about Chelsea. The funnier, the better. My initial reaction was a time when Chelsea and I were having a movie night on the couch, and we were watching a scary snake movie. I'm petrified of snakes, but I was taking one for the team. Although I had seen the movie before with her brother and knew when one of the scary parts was coming, I wasn't expecting Chelsea to shift her position on the couch and stick her big toe into my butt cheek. I screamed, she screamed, popcorn went flying everywhere, and after my heart stopped racing, we laughed together for a good 10 minutes. After sharing this story with my counselor, she told me to think of this story every time I started to play the death anniversary movie in my head. She said, just think of it as a light switch, to intentionally stop the negative movie and replace it with the happy thought. Honestly, I thought that was too simple to work. How could so much traumatic memory be shifted with one thought replacement? But the first time it happened, It was miraculous for me. Then I kept doing it again and again. Like I said, this may not work for everyone, but I like to share methods that may help others. Try it and see how you do. Leave me a comment. I'd love to know how it worked for you. Now, after 14 years, those anniversaries look different for me. Instead of her death anniversary looming over the preceding week, I will note it's coming and just move along through my days. I usually make a post on Facebook for friends and family to see about how much we miss her so that her life isn't forgotten. And the negative movie stream has ended at this point. If I feel any emotion those days, I find it stems more from things going on in my subconscious. I work to act intentionally and force a lot of self-care on those days. I tend to keep to myself, and my family knows just to let me be. While I have mostly eliminated negative thoughts when it comes to her birthday, this year was tough because she would have celebrated her 30th one. I relished in the fact that she hadn't experienced the entire decade of her 20s. It made me think of all the things that were invented that she's never seen, like iPhones and Facebook. It makes me wonder what she'd think about living in this world today. Thanks for listening, and please come back and check in for new episodes. We will continue to release more podcasts because there are suicide deaths every day, and the average number of people left behind from one death averages 135. That's a lot of pain and a lot of people hiding in that pain because of the stigma surrounding suicide. If, as a society, we continue with the status quo and don't step forward as survivors to say what we're going through, things won't change. The stigma won't change, and help will remain unavailable. If I need to be the voice to get that started, then that's okay. Let's do it. You will help our podcast by sharing it. Please share to help others. And again, please visit our website at www.journeythroughgrief.com. That's THRU for through. I welcome comments, questions, or let me know if there's a topic you'd like for me to talk about. I will be happy to share my own personal journey. You can also leave comments on our Journey Through Grief Facebook page. Additionally, we do accept monetary gifts of support on our website, which allows us to provide materials and educational information to those who need it. Thank you for spending your time with me, and take care until next time.